Hi, welcome back. Let's continue our training and review scheduling and appointment searches. To access the appointment section of the software, you can use the appointment drop-down menu. There are also shortcut icons like daily view schedule, check-in, check-out, weekly view, and others that can be configured. But for the purpose of training, we're going to work from the drop-down menu. I'll point out shortcuts where they exist. Starting with the appointment drop-down, the first thing we come to is appointments. And the submenu is showing you that we have several different views that can be utilized. For the purpose of training, we're going to use the daily view and the provider day view. We'll also look quickly at the weekly view. Let's go into the daily view. The daily view schedule can be configured to display however you want. With the daily view schedule, and remember this Windows button from our prior navigation training, I can use this to set up my windows or use the cursor to resize them however I want. I want it to be full screen for the purpose of training. So when I'm in the daily view schedule, it's allowing me to see only one provider at a time. Remember, once I set my desktop up the way you see here, and I exit and go back into my daily view, it should remember my settings as it just did. When I'm in the daily view, my menu options are going to change to my daily view options. My title bar shows that I'm in appointments, and I'm in the appointment schedule for provider number 2, which is Paul Primary, and it's showing the appointment date as November 6, 2012, which is Tuesday. Currently viewing the AM portion, I can also quickly toggle if I have a small screen into the PM portion. In AM, I can see I have 9 visits, where in PM, I can see I have 4. I also have the ability to have multiple columns in my daily view schedules. You can have up to 3 columns per provider. You can also choose to only have a single column. The column header, rather than A11 and B2, can have any title you want, and that's part of the administrative setup. Additionally, I can set up the location where providers may be seeing patients at multiple locations. I can divide that out. Let's just say they were seeing patients in the Canefield office in the morning, and then maybe the afternoon he was going to be at the hospital. I could have a marker that shows the switch to the hospital location. And in the far right side, notice my drop-down. It's my provider. I'm currently on Paul Primary, but I can select from any provider in the practice that I have configured my desktop to display. So if I wanted to go look at the nurse Lisa Webb's schedule, I can do that. And I can bounce back to whoever I need to. If you're a practice with a single provider, then you really won't be toggling or moving this anywhere. This is called the daily view schedule. So let's review some of the options, and then we'll go over some of the other views that are available in MicroMD. The first thing is, if I click new, it's opening up a new appointment window, allowing me to schedule a new appointment. Notice the time and date selected is Dr. Primary at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, November 6th. And the reason it did that is my cursor was blinking in this 8 o'clock slot. If I move my cursor to the 5 o'clock slot and hit new, it's going to change to the 5 o'clock slot. So if I wanted to create a new appointment, I would click my cursor into the field, and I can either double click the time slot, which opens up a new appointment screen for that particular time on that calendar day, or putting my cursor in the field, hit the new button. Whatever is most convenient for you. And this is showing 8:15 because my cursor was in the 8:15 slot prior to hitting new. I can move the date or change the date of the appointment by clicking on the calendar at whatever date I want the appointment to be scheduled for. This would also allow me to see what appointment slots were available. Additionally, you can use the open slot search if your practice is fairly busy and set a start date for your search. Maybe they need to come in 1 year and so forth. You would set up your start and ending date and the time frame that the patient says is most convenient. And you would ask the system, you would indicate, if you have multiple providers, indicate which provider you want the patient to see. And in this case, let's don't go out a year. Let's just make it a month. So we'll say this patient needs to see the doctor at some point from December to January 7th. And any time is fine. The patient didn't really care, but they don't want to do it on a Monday or a Tuesday. They can only do it on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And so I could hit my search icon, and this is going to list out the available time slots. And then I can say, how about, of course, if you have multiple locations, you'll also want to make sure that you indicate which location you're trying to book the appointment for. So let's narrow this down a little further. And here's my appointments. And so I can highlight one and say, okay, I have an 8 o'clock on Thursday, December 20th. And the patient could say yes or no. And if the patient says yes, I can double click that. It'll open up that particular date, and my cursor will be in that slot for me to double click and book the appointment. I would then key in my patient's name and so forth. We'll go over the screen in just a moment. So you can see where the calendar allows you to bounce around to different dates. If you ever want to get back to the current day, just click on the Today link at the bottom of the calendar or the Today button on your schedule here. You can set up these quick links to allow you to go out 6 weeks, 3 months, or whatever is most convenient for you. This pop-up you're seeing is just telling me my template is not set up for 3 months out, and so it's asking me, do I want to apply my template? I can do that if I have security permissions to do so. So this could be a today appointment, a 2-week follow-up, and a 1-month follow-up, or whatever is most convenient or most widely used by your practice. When you want to come back to today, just simply click the Today button. So that's how you would navigate using your calendar around a particular provider schedule. You can tell the system, and I'm going to just go through these different options here. So new would allow you to create a new appointment. You would double click the time slot after you selected the appropriate date. Change appointment allows you to do just that, change an appointment. Let's say that this Peter Paxton appointment, the patient calls and says, I can't come in this morning, but I can come this afternoon. Is that possible? And we say, sure. Click your cursor into the appointment slot. Hit your change appointment. You can either cut it because you're just going to paste it onto a different appointment slot, or you can reschedule it. I'm going to go ahead and use cut for this. Say OK, and it's going to push that patient appointment right here to my clipboard. So on my clipboard, and one thing to make note of is my clipboard is set to global. That means I'm not only seeing things that I put on the clipboard, and you can see at the bottom it says added to clipboard by, and it gives the username. But I can also tell the system I only ever want to see my stuff. I don't care about other people's stuff. I just want to see what I put on there. And so it goes from global to user. At any point I want to change back, I just hit the little filter icon, uncheck, and tell it what I want. You can even narrow it down to a specific location. So how do I move this appointment? The patient canceled their 9 o'clock slot, but wants to come in this afternoon. Well, the easiest way is to cut as we did and put it on the clipboard, and then just drag and drop from the clipboard. And the patient said, sure, 4 o'clock would be perfect for me. Just drop them right into the 4 o'clock appointment slot. That patient appointment is now rescheduled, and that's going to show not only in the appointment history of the patient, but on your schedule. So let's recap. I'm going to move this back to the 9 o'clock slot. Click your cursor in the field, hit your change appointment. Choose the most appropriate status. Is it canceled? Is the patient not coming in? Well, select canceled, and you can even type notes here. Or is it rescheduled? If it's rescheduled and you know when the appointment's going to be scheduled, you can choose this and give a reason why you're rescheduling it here. If it's a missed appointment, that's just indicating the patient was on your schedule and simply did not show. This is a good way to mark up the appointment so that the billing office will know, if they run a status report, that the patient missed their appointment. They never did present to the office for that appointment. Additionally, there are some automated processes that will allow the system to automatically find those missed appointments, but that's dependent on you using check-in and check-out, and we'll go over that here in just a little bit. Finally, we use the cut appointment, and that's simply going to cut it off of the schedule here and allow me to paste it elsewhere. And then you have 2 other options. You can move that appointment to the waiting list. Let's say that the patient says, I can't come in today, but is there any chance I could come tomorrow? And you tell the patient, well, sorry, but we're all booked tomorrow, but I can put you on the waiting list and call you if anybody cancels their appointment. If you wanted to choose that option, you would say, okay, and we'll look at a waiting list option in just a moment. But let's go ahead again. And this time, instead of cut, we're going to use rescheduled and say, okay. it still places the patient on my clipboard. And now I can drag and drop that patient wherever I want to put them. I put them back at their 9 o'clock slot. The only time an appointment will not go onto your clipboard is if you simply delete it. My cursor is blinking. I'm actually going to choose this Chris Barton, and I didn't mean to double click. I apologize. You only click one time to get your cursor, and if you double click, you open up the appointment details. So with my cursor blinking in the 9:30 slot, I'm going to go ahead and choose delete. It's going to open this window, and I can delete and say that I scheduled the wrong patient because maybe I made an error. I can also cancel the appointment, show it as missed, or move it to the waiting list. When I hit delete, it takes that appointment off the schedule, and it does not put that patient on the clipboard. Now, the clipboard is something that opens automatically when you use changed appointment. However, if you close it and need to get it back, just simply come over to your options and choose clipboard. The same would go for the calendar. If you accidentally close your calendar or close it on purpose but need to bring it back, go through your daily view option list and choose calendar to open that back up. And the last thing is, when I exit window, the system should always remember where I like to keep the things or the tools that I'm using. And so now I'm going to come in and let's do change appointment again, and notice it's remembering where I wanted my clipboard. This time we're going to do the waiting list. We're going to go ahead and say change appointment, and we're going to move this patient to the waiting list and say okay. What's going to happen is the system's going to open our waiting list and allow me to set the waiting list preferences. Is there a particular day a week the patient is looking for? Well, let's say that it's a Wednesday and they only can come in from a certain time. So we can notate that and say from 8 a.m. until 10 a.m. Okay? And it's already looking up in the particular provider and location that we had the appointment set with to begin with. However, if you wanted to change that or you wanted to make it any, you could do that. We're not going to change that. Additionally, with the provider, the same thing. You can make it for any provider or a particular provider. And so we're telling the system that this is the time that this patient wants to be notified. In fact, let's change this and let's make it for Tuesday at 10 a.m. Can only come in 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Okay. And we'll accept that. And so now I have my 10 o'clock slot is already booked. And I'm going to go ahead in here and just put another patient just to make sure that everything's taken. And I'll be reviewing that process here in just a minute. Okay, so my schedule is booked for the 6th at 10 a.m. So right now that patient's not going to be able to get an appointment. I want to go ahead and do my exit window and go back into my daily view. Now notice that my waiting list did not pop up. However, if I were to come in here and say this patient called and they canceled their appointment and say okay, it's going to put that patient on my clipboard, but it's also opening up the waiting list to remind me there's somebody that wants an appointment at 10 a.m. And so I'm able to take and schedule this patient if I want to for 8 a.m. or for that open appointment slot. And so to do that, I can move my patient here and I can drag and drop my patient right from my waiting list onto my schedule. That allows me to schedule that patient appointment. If I needed to change the details, I could do that. And once I've utilized that patient from the waiting list, then that appointment or that patient comes off of my waiting list unless I set it up as a reoccurring appointment. So I've jumped around a little, so let me recap on this. I'm going to close out my calendar and I'm going to exit window. I access from my drop down the daily view schedule. I could have also used the F4 key, or I could use the quick link icon here at the bottom of my screen. Let's go ahead and use that quick link icon. Opening my schedule, there are a number of things I can do here. The first thing I notice is my daily view schedule and the options under that listing. Remember, this is your action pane. I can create new appointments. I can change existing appointments or move patients to a waiting list. If I cut an appointment like Anthony Smith from the 9:15 slot and I come in and say cut and okay, that patient ends up on my waiting list. Once I cut that appointment, I simply put my cursor in the time slot I want to paste it, and I use the Paste Appointment button. And that's going to paste my appointment. So as I launch my daily view schedule, my action icons available show here on the left. New allows me to create a new appointment. I would select my date and my time slot and then hit New, or simply double click the slot to enter a new appointment. And we'll do that shortly. Change appointment. I can access the appointment I want to change. Now, if it's not on my current day's schedule, I'll show you how to find a patient appointment either through the patient account or through the appointment inquiry screen. But let's just say that I wanted to move this Florence Smith appointment. I would click my cursor into this appointment slot where my cursor is blinking there, and I would choose Change Appointment. When I choose to cut it, because I'm just simply moving it to later in the day or somewhere else on the schedule, I hit OK. That pushes that patient's appointment onto my clipboard. Now, I don't have to drag and drop. I can left click, hold, and drag and drop. You see when you see this icon, it's allowing you to move that appointment. However, I can also say the patient's going to come in at, and I didn't mean to double click, at 2:30, and I can just hit the paste appointment because before I cut it, so cut and paste go together. Once I paste, it takes that appointment right off my clipboard and pastes it onto my schedule in the time slot that I select. The ability to cancel, reschedule, show as missed, cut, or move to the waiting list. And the waiting list was a bit unique because when we move it to the waiting list, remember it allows us to tell it what doctor we want or multiple doctors, what location or multiple locations. Then it also allows us to tell the system what day of the week, what date range, or a particular date, it can be an individual or a range, and the time frame. And once we accept on that, I'm going to go ahead and cancel. And when you cancel out, it just says that move copy failed because you stopped the process and it leaves the appointment alone. But had I continued with the waiting list, remember, I would get a pop-up allowing me to drag that appointment right onto my schedule when I was ready to do that, when I had a free appointment. And the system will automatically tell me if I clear up an 11 o'clock appointment, the system, when I go back into my schedule, is going to automatically generate that waiting list and show those people waiting for appointments that have now become available. Labels and mail merge. From the appointment screen, you have a few different options. You can create labels and mail merge documents, including appointment cards. So if you're rescheduling a patient as they're walking out of the office and you subscribe or purchase the appointment card printing devices, you can actually print the appointment cards off rather than handwrite them. Additionally, you can create mailing labels or mail merge documents using the built-in mail merge capabilities. Keep in mind, mail merge in MicroMD requires that you have Microsoft Word. That would need to be installed on the workstation where the mail merge was going to be processed. Mail merge will be discussed in an advanced training module. Customize Day is an administrative function that will be reviewed in our appointment template setup. Open slots, remember, allows you to search for open appointment slots based on the criteria that you set, including the provider, appointment class, and location, the search date range, and time range. And you can set which days of the week. This will allow you to launch right over to the schedule to schedule a new appointment once you find an appropriate slot. Show and hide empty just simply cleans up your schedule so you're not seeing a lot of white space. And clicking it and then clicking it again, it's toggling it on and off. Export appointment is something utilized by automated phone dialing systems. It's an add-on feature that does require a license. If you need information on this, please let us know. Appointment requests. Again, this is an add-on feature if you're using the patient portal or other third-party fee-based applications. The appointment request is something that can be utilized, and we can direct you on features and functions that might be beneficial to your practice if you inquire. Calendar opens your calendar. Had you closed the calendar, simply clicking on it will open that back up. Open Legend just allows you to see what the different colors for your different appointment classifications are. Clipboard. Clipboard is where the system stores information or patient appointment information when you make changes to a particular appointment, allowing you to more efficiently reset that appointment or process the change. Provider order is a big item. This is what allows you to determine who you're seeing in your drop-down list and who you're monitoring the schedules on. If you're in a large practice and you only schedule and deal with patients for 2 providers, you can simply make sure that those providers show in your selections made column. Everybody else you can bring over to the left in the available selections. This means that they will not be in view. So as I drag these out, you'll notice that my list becomes smaller. I'll go ahead and hit accept, and you'll see that some of those have disappeared. The other thing you can do is if maybe this doctor sees more patients and you're often going in his schedule over this one, you can change the order in which they display. So when I come out and go back in, it's changed from primary to pedia. And so that would be the first or default provider schedule that would load. If I needed to toggle over to another, I just simply hit the drop down, choose them, and now I'm in that doctor's schedule. So now that we've reviewed the daily view schedule, let's go over and look at the provider day view schedule. And in brief, I will tell you that a purpose for this schedule more than likely is going to be when you have the need to view things in a particular order. And by using your provider order, that's going to allow you to affect that change. So if you have a particular provider and nurse that work together and maybe schedule in tandem, you could do that and move their schedules next to each other so they can quickly see. Additionally, on the provider's view, maybe they don't care about, you may care about these others, so on your view you have all the other doctors, but Dr. Primary and Lisa Webb, they only want to see each other's stuff. They don't deal with patients from the other providers in the practice, so they don't want to know any of that, but maybe they do care about the lab and scheduling in the lab, and so, or some kind of procedure room. So we can go ahead and actually we'll leave x-ray and lab. And so Dr. Primary can have this view where he sees his particular schedule, his nurse's schedule, or a nurse practitioner, and the lab office and maybe the x-ray room. And I can have my daily view and my provider day view open out at the same time. I can tile those because I like to look at both schedules. Maybe primary is the one that I'm going to schedule on the most, so I want it to be full screen, because on these schedules I'm only getting a small snapshot where I can see everything here. Anthony Smith is cut off here. But if I hover, you can see the hover text shows the patient name, phone number, chart number. And had I put any appointment notes here, those will also display in that pop-up. And so now when I hover, let's get rid of our clipboard, and when I hover, you can see appointment notes will display. And I can layer other windows like my demographics right on top because I want to work in demographics, and then I can close my patient demographics and my schedules are still open. I can also minimize my schedules. Remember this from navigation, and now they're both down at the bottom, and to enlarge them or bring them back up, I just hit the maximize buttons and bring those back. And at any point, I can close these out. I know which one I'm in because when I click on Daily View, that's what I see. And when I click on Provider Day View, that's the menu I'm going to see. And I can close that just the same. Finally, we have a third view that may or may not be helpful, and that's the weekly view. And this just allows you to take an individual provider and see their appointment schedule over a week's span. Again, this is an optional view that you may or may not find helpful. Each view that you open, you do have to set and let the system know how you want your calendar. So now that I've set that, when I come back in my weekly view, it's going to remember that I like my calendar down here. Location day view and resource allocation view are going to depend on the practice. Those are things that we'll be happy to discuss with you if you have the need, or you can look them up yourself under the help and reference manual for further details. Or you can simply go into them and just see what they offer. Let me go back into our daily view and let's go through the one thing we have not done, which is actually scheduling a new appointment. So there are a couple things to know about that. Number one, when scheduling an appointment, you first pick the date and time for the appointment. So let's just say that we're scheduling it for next week on Wednesday, and it's going to be a 11 o'clock appointment. It's a follow-up for a patient at the Canefield office. So I would go to the 14th, which is next week Wednesday, and then I would choose my time slot. I can read my title bar and see that it's Wednesday the 14th. Double-clicking the time slot when I go into the appointment. Now I see it's 11 o'clock on Wednesday, November 14th. Automatically, the system is going to default to the existing patient. Here, I can type in my patient name, partial name or full name, or my patient account number. I can also type in just a last name and it'll bring up a list and I can choose from that list. But let's choose Anthony because he has quite a bit of stuff set up that I want to be able to show you. Actually, let's choose and see if I make a mistake. I just simply type a new name. This is a good one, especially for those that need the post-op date. It will allow you to see and it will display the post-op date for patients when that is configured on your system. And that's set up and will be reviewed in the management training, administrative. That is one of the functions under the maintenance dropdown when you set up your procedures that you can note certain procedure codes as post-op. Okay, so now let's review scheduling a new appointment. Remember, we have to choose our date first. So let's just say that it has to be next week on Wednesday at 10 a.m. We would double click the time slot and we would see that we're with Dr. Paul Primary. It's at the Canefield office showing on the schedule. And the time is 10 a.m. on Wednesday. So the next thing I would do, automatically it's defaulting to existing patient. So let's start by scheduling an existing patient and we'll use Anthony Smith. Remember, we can do a partial name or his account number. So I could have done 1001. I'm going to choose the appointment type and choose the most appropriate. Let's go ahead and just say that this is going to be a follow-up appointment. It will automatically determine the number of slots based on the configuration done in the administrative training. You can also override to make an appointment fit. Say it was a 1 hour and you're dumbing it down to 3 15-minute appointment slots to make it 45 minutes so that you can squeeze that patient in. You certainly have the ability to override. The charge slip or encounter form that would print, you can have multiple on the system. You can also have defaults based on the appointment class or provider. You see some items blinking here. Medicare as a patient category was set up to flash. You don't have to make it that way, but you can certainly have, like, a good example for that would be a collection status. And it could be flashing collection so that the person scheduling the patient knows, okay, we may need to check with billing on this. The next thing you see flashing is this referral. If, based on the insurance that's set up for the patient, a referral is required, the system can warn that there is no referring doctor set up and that needs to happen for this appointment because the insurance company requires it. Additionally, I can see that there's a cancer recall follow-up set, and I can see that there's a copay of $10. Had I populated all 4 phone number fields, I would see those, but I'm only seeing the main and the work and not the alternate and the cell phone. I can see chronic diagnosis codes. The other thing I can do is choose if the patient's coming in for something other than the medical insurance. I can choose the case right then and there. Notice how when I change to a work comp case, all of a sudden my plan set is changing. And when I go back, it changes back to the medical. I can make up notes here regarding the appointment. This note field pertains only to this appointment, not future, not past appointments, just this appointment right here. Remember my remarks, this is pulling over from demographics. If I were to change this here, it's going to change it everywhere else in the system. Let's look at some of the icons and things you have access to. The first icon you have are patient notes. You can review and add patient notes right from there. For instance, you may say that you reminded the patient to bring in notes from referring doctor. I spelled it wrong, but we get the point. The next thing is I have access to the appointment history, so I can see how many times this patient is canceling or rescheduling. if for some reason. The other thing I can see is, does he have an appointment already scheduled next week that I maybe shouldn't be scheduling this one? We can just use an existing. The next thing is planned visits. If we're utilizing a planned visit, are there remaining visits, or is the authorization no longer in effect, and do we need something new or need to inform billing? The case information. This is where we have the default case, or whichever case is selected here, and you can get the details on that. The next thing you have is the ability to set up a recurring appointment if that's necessary. It can be daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and you can determine the criteria for that recurrence. You can also go into a recurring appointment, and it'll give you the option to remove all the recurring appointments. Referral. On the referral tracking, same as from the demographics, it's just giving you access to that information here to make notes, etc. The same with recall. We can pull up and look at the recall reasons. RX is not going to pertain. I don't believe that function is available any longer. Patient export, same thing there. And so you pretty much have the same icons that we reviewed from the demographics, with the exception of it adds the patient notes and the appointment history. Remember, to see the subset, you have to click on the black arrow. Okay, next, patient balance. The patient balance is $986.10. The account balance is $11.18. It's saying that there is a credit balance currently of $456, and that probably has to do with a lot of bad math on the part of us trainers, and this is a demo system because that's probably a very unrealistic picture. But basically, in the due column for patient, right here, you would be able to tell the patient, I've got you scheduled for 10 a.m. on Wednesday, November 14th. Please don't forget you have a copay of $10, and you also have a current account balance of $75. So you'll need to take care of that when you come to the office. And they would be able to relay that to the patient. And finally, when everything looks the way you want it to look, or it looks good, you're just going to hit accept, and that schedules the appointment. So let's go over here and let's schedule a new patient. Actually, we'll go on to the new patient slot here and just double click. So here I know that these are going to be for new patients. I'm going to choose new. Now, it depends on, I say I'm going to change new or select new. The fact is, it depends on your practice. If you decide to create patient accounts before you schedule a new appointment, then you would go into patient, create a new demographic record for the new patient, and then when you came in here, you would do the same thing as we've been doing. Pull up the patient account number, or last name, comma, first name to pull up the patient. But let's just say that you want to use the temporary accounts, which means you only want to assign an account number to a patient once they present to your office. To schedule them, you don't need an account number. You can simply select new, and in the name and date of birth, since it's not looking up an existing patient, you'll want to go into this registration icon to create a temporary registration. So we'll do it on me. You can put as much or as little information as you want to. Okay. I can continue. Now, I will tell you this. You have a demographic screen, and when I go next, I have insurance screens. The only screen that's going to save information from is this demographic screen. So I highly recommend that you only choose the demographics and populate it. If for some reason you want to be able to keep or store the insurance information, I would just make a brief statement like Blue Cross Blue Shield Alabama, etc. In the notes or in the remarks section, because adding the insurance, and you very well might want to, and it's telling me that there's a possible match. And why would it tell me that? Because I've duplicated the social. You can see that I have a duplicated social. I'm just going to say, no, that's not it, and continue. So it is going to check your system to see if anybody by that name with that date of birth and social exists. Any matches are going to trigger the system to say, wait a minute, I've got a match here on phone number on this, and it might be a duplicate record. So it's trying to help you to avoid creating a duplicate account. You can still put the insurance information in if you know it. And certainly I just did the SS shortcut for social, and I can put whatever I need to. And finally, I would just hit finish. And so here I have all my details. I can say that it's a new patient, referred by Dr. Smith for hypertension and whatever else, and then they're Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama. Okay, and hit accept. That schedules that new patient. Now when this patient arrives, I'll be able to create an account. And notice as I hover there, I have a chart number, which is also the same as their account number. Here, chart number says temp. You know that they have not been to your practice before, and you have no account number or chart for them currently. To move or change a temporary appointment would be the same thing as moving or changing an existing appointment. So let's recap on scheduling an appointment. First, we pick the date and time. We'll just pretend like today, November 14th, is the day we want. We find the time slot and we double click on it. It opens up a new appointment window. We can either schedule an existing patient by searching the account number or name, or schedule a new patient by clicking on the registration icon. Once we've completed all the appointment details and hit the accept button, that's what populates the appointment on the schedule. Now, in order to change or move that appointment, we have to use our change appointment icon. So I can change it and cancel, reschedule, show them missed, cut it to paste it elsewhere, or move them to the waiting list. If I hit cancel, I'm going to get a move copy failed or canceled, and that's fine because I did, in fact, went in there to change it, but then I changed my mind and I canceled. So that's perfectly fine. Let's continue down the appointment menu. Now we've looked at the different views and how to schedule appointments on the views. Let's go and look at appointment inquiry. How do we find that appointment? Well, we click on appointment inquiry. You can also have a shortcut here to make this easier to access, especially if you're a front desk person that's going to be doing this quite a bit. Now remember I scheduled that temporary patient? Well, because I did it the proper way, I'm able to search out and find that appointment. If I double click, it's going to take me right out to the schedule and blink my cursor in that appointment slot. I can type in a patient last name, comma, first name, or I can type in the patient account number, and it's going to go out and find every appointment. This patient has a lot of appointments, as you can see. And if I wanted to cancel, say, this one, I would double click. It takes me out to the schedule, which is not currently configured. I'll say accept. And I can then cancel that using the change appointment and say the patient called to cancel, make my notes here, and just say okay. What is it going to do? It's going to move that appointment from the schedule. It's going to pop up the waiting list saying, hey, she was waiting on that appointment. So I can just drag and drop her from and put her on there. Now, it warned me that it was for a different location. So it will warn you when you're changing, when you have an appointment, you're moving it and you're not putting it at the right location. If in fact your practice has multiple locations, it will also warn me if I'm changing providers, which is a nice feature. Okay. So that's how you would search appointments. Recapping, appointment inquiry, and then search by name or number. Additionally, you can make this appointment inquiry option available to you in your shortcut menu here, which I highly recommend for those that will utilize that. If the other thing is, you notice in the provider order, you can determine which providers you're able to search for by setting this up. This is throughout the system. Appointment reports. We're only going to go into the schedule report for the purpose of training. You also have a status report and a check-in, check-out report that may be useful to your practice. However, the only thing we're going to be reviewing during this training is the schedule report. Feel free to look through all the reports and utilize those that might be helpful. You can also go to the help and reference manual to review and look up the different items or need or use of the reports. So on the schedule report, I can set the appointment date that I want to look at. If I'm clicking on all, it's going to search my system for all dates. However, if I want to range, I can just say I want today. And in my time, I don't want it to do 8 to 4. I want it to pull all appointments. I don't care if they're scheduled at 7 in the morning or 5 in the afternoon or evening, early, late afternoon, whatever you want to call it. I want it to pull everything. I can tell it to only pull certain classes of appointments, pull the schedule for certain providers, which I am going to do. I'm only going to pull for primary Paul. Now, when I'm in this drop-down list and I select one, if I want to select 2 providers, like I can also select Lisa Webb. I'm going to hold my control key down and, oops, I didn't want her. I want Lisa Webb. So now I have 2 of 25 selected. Once I'm done, I just have to click. Oops, I didn't mean to click there. Let's try that again. Primary Paul, scroll down to Lisa Webb, and I'm going to hit my control key. To get out of this, I just need to click in the field right above it, and that takes me out. I can also choose a particular location if desired. I can tell the system to order it by time, chart number, or name, whatever is most efficient for me. I can group it by provider location or plan provider is most common. Now, I can also tell it to show all slots, which would even allow me, as I get call-ins, to go and write in a name. So it's going to show all the open appointment slots, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then something more important is I can show it landscaped. And the reason I might want to do that is because I want to show balances that are patient-based or account-based, however you want to see it. And so now I'm going to hit my accept button, and that's going to print the schedule to my screen. This is what your printed schedule would look like. And so because I told it to show the open slots, it's showing all of these even though there's no name in them. And I can handwrite in values as they occur. I can also always come back to my options and tell it, you know what, forget it. I don't want the open slots. I just want to see my patients that are actually scheduled. And so that's going to change the look of my report. As I scroll down, it's going to give me a count for the patients. And notice it's parsing them out by provider. Here I have Paul Primary's appointments, and here I have Lisa Webb. And Lisa Webb is showing twice because this is going to be page 2 here. This is on the bottom of page 1, and then it's going to start over on page 2. The detail that you're going to get, and let me scroll down just a little. Okay, so you're going to be able to see those notes, and they're fairly lengthy. I want to say about 200 to 250 characters that you'd be able to see. You'll be able to see patient balance, overall insurance balance, and total account balance, and other information. So if I want to check eligibility, I have the ability to select all. I can also deselect certain patients if I want to. And from there, I would simply click on my patient eligibility. I'm going to go ahead and deselect all and just select the one and click patient eligibility. And what's going to happen is the system's going to go out and it's going to transmit for every one of these. The recommendation is that you run this at the end of a business day or on a workstation that may not be in use during lunch or something like that. It's going to generate the necessary reports for the practice. And then you'll also have a streamlined report that you can process on the EDI side or a Practice Insight side of things. So rather than getting the full comprehensive list that the insurance company is sending back to you, you have the ability to get from EDI a report that looks very similar to what you're seeing on screen. It just has the patient name, yes or no on their coverage, and what their copay is going to be. The nice thing is that I can select all, run my eligibility, and just walk away. And this is going to allow me to have eligibility results in the morning or after lunch, something like that, depending on the size of your practice. If that's a feature that you're interested in, we can certainly discuss the possibilities for your practice and your configuration. Remember that specifically, Practice Insight is the tool that's developed for MicroMD. However, we can work with development and see what we can work out if you use a different clearinghouse. Let's go to the check-in, check-out module. The check-in, check-out module is a nice tool. Again, we have appointment requests that can come in if that's an advanced feature that you've subscribed to. I'm going to go ahead and close it. And for the purpose of training, I'm just going to go over what check-in, check-out is. This allows you to track patients coming through your office. You can sort on any of these column headers, and this is throughout the system. Whenever you see that A to Z, I can sort on patient name, reverse order, ascending or descending. I can sort on my provider. I can sort on whatever fields I want to, appointment times. That would probably be more realistic. Filter checked out. Filter checked out just says if you have patients that you've checked out, they fall off your screen and you want to see them again, just click on filter checked out and that'll bring it back. You've seen provider order many, many times, and you can again set this up here as desired. The legend is no different than the legend in the appointment screen. So what is check in, check out? Well, it allows you to see your patients in order and note the time as they arrive to the practice. And it's going to tell you what insurance they're using. As they check in, this is going to indicate to the back office that this is the electronic version of setting the chart in a basket. So when you check them in, the staff, rather than you having to call them or tell them anything, should be able to see that checked in status and the patient's ready to be seen in the back. So it's clinical's turn. They're done with registration. And finally, when the patient's completed their visit, you're just going to hit the checkout. Now, you shouldn't be getting this. Appointment date is not the same as day sheet. Do you want to continue? No, you never want to continue because you should always be processing your appointments with the associated or same date day sheet. I'm going to say no. And I'm going to exit and I'm going to go do what I should do, which is go to my miscellaneous and day sheet select and make sure that I'm on the current day's day sheet. So I'm going to select the 6 and say accept. By default, you have a billing office that should already prepare the system, and when you log in, this should be an automatic thing. I should have automatically connected to the appropriate day sheet. However, because it's a demo, that didn't occur. Now, let's go ahead and let's process these again. And let's say we also have warnings that when you may accidentally uncheck something. I'm saying yes, I mean to uncheck that. And it's just saying, hey, this might be an accident because maybe it's refreshing and I thought I clicked on this row, but I actually clicked on this one. So it's just warning me. So I'm going to arrive the patient. It allows me to see the insurance information. I'm going to check in the patient once I'm done with all the paperwork. I've updated insurance. I've collected my copay. I've made sure that they have HIPAA on file, and every other piece of administrative paperwork that I have to do as a front desk person is going to be complete. And then I'm going to check in the patient, and that's indicating to the nurse or nurses, staff, that this patient's ready to be seen in the back. And finally, after the patient has been through the clinic, seen the doctor or whoever they've come in to see that day, and they go to my checkout desk, my checkout desk is going to go ahead and just check on the checkout box to complete the visit for the patient. So what you're seeing here is a billing screen, and depending on the way your practice is structured, whoever hits checkout can automatically just bill the charges right from the form that's in front of them. If the patient has a chronic condition or a case set up, those diagnosis codes and so forth are going to come over automatically. This can be turned off. This will be based on the workflow with your practice. Just know that you can have checkout automatically trigger the system to allow you to bill the charge right then and there. Let me point out one other thing. You can see these little icons over to the far left, and this one's yellow. And this one's yellow. And the reason those are yellow is because that one looked yellow. Let's click on this one. I know it's yellow. It allows you to see the image of the patient. So when you're scanning those driver's licenses and the patient presents, if you're not familiar with the patients and you're trying to get Anthony's attention, you can click this to know which one of the patients in the lobby is Anthony. So now let's continue with holiday vacation. Holiday vacation allows you to come in, select your provider, and we'll just click on any one here, and set up a vacation day. For instance, maybe this provider normally works through the Thanksgiving week, but this year he says, I'm taking the whole week of Thanksgiving off. And so I can come in and I can close out the week from the 19th to the 23rd using my calendars and say, Thanksgiving vacation, and hit apply. And that's going to close out that provider's schedule for that time period. Now, the system will say, let me look at your schedule, and it's telling me that on the 23rd at 10:30, we already have a scheduled appointment. And so this appointment is going to be affected by this schedule or template closing. And so I can say, move that to the clipboard and allow me to reschedule them, which is what I would do. Or I can also print a list. So my recommendation, depending on how lengthy it is, would be to print a list and then move them all to the clipboard. I'm going to go ahead and just select clipboard, and it's saying choosing this option will remove all selected appointments and then place them on the clipboard. Are you sure you want to proceed? I'm going to say no because I didn't select it. You'll want to select all and make sure it's checkmarked. And so yes, I want to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and say doctor decided to close for the week, because it's not the patient's fault. So when I look this up in the patient's history, why did they reschedule? Well, because the doctor closed his schedule. And so that would note that on, if I had 50 accounts, it would note it on all 50. Notice that my patient clipboard has opened for me to reschedule. And I'm going to go ahead, and here's another one that's affected. Same scenario. I'm going to move it to the clipboard. Yes. Make my notes here and put the rescheduled. And so it's going to go and do that for each of the days. And I'm going to select all, clipboard, yes, rescheduled, okay. And select all, clipboard, yes, rescheduled, okay. And finally the last day, clipboard, yes, rescheduled. Okay, so I've moved all of those patient appointments, and now if I go to my daily view schedule for Dr. Gastro, which I don't know if he's in my list. He's not. Let me go to my provider order, and let's get him. Let's bring him up to the top. And so I'm going to exit and go back in. He should be my first. When I go to next week, notice my calendar has all red dates. That's because I closed those out. When I click on them, you can see that it's locked down for Thanksgiving vacation. The other thing you can see if I hit on my clipboard is you can see all these patients' appointments that I moved there for rescheduling. And so I would come in, access my clipboard if it wasn't already open, and I can come through and I can see all the different patients. I can hover and say, this patient was set for a follow-up on the 23rd at 10:30, and I need to reschedule that. And the patient says, oh, sure. And I say, can you come in on the 26th, or would you still prefer a Friday? Because they were on a Friday. And they said, well, I'd much prefer a Friday. Great. How is 10:30 on the 30th? And they say, that would work great. So I simply left-click, hold, and drag and drop that patient, and that patient's been rescheduled. And I would continue to do that with all my patients until they were all rescheduled. And so I can just do that. Of course, I'd be calling them using the phone number and looking at the appointment details to do this. And once I'm complete, of course, my clipboard is now empty, and I've rescheduled all the appointments. And some of them I may not be able to schedule, and with the name highlighted, I would just hit the X to delete that item off my clipboard. Maybe the patient says, well, I'll just call you back or something like that. So that is how the holiday vacation works. It not only allows you to block out time for a particular provider, but it's also going to give you a way to handle or reschedule those patients in the most efficient manner. And we've already discussed the waiting list, but this is just another way to get into the waiting list. So I can come in here and I can see there are certain patients on there, and they were created quite some time ago. These patients could be deleted from the clipboard by simply highlighting the row and using the delete option. I can also double click and open the details and then change this if I want to, or simply delete it. I'm going to go ahead and leave this for demonstrative purposes. So that completes our appointment drop-down menu. Let's recap. We have appointments in different views that we can select. Our F4 shortcut key allows us to access the daily view schedule, which is most commonly used. The appointment inquiry allows us to search for a patient appointment on the system by patient name, appointment reports. The one report that's most utilized is the schedule report. Check-in and check-out allows you to track patients in the flow of those patients through your office. Using check-in check-out automates several features in MicroMD. If you're using the check-in check-out, MicroMD will automatically look at your schedule at the end of the day, and anybody that was not marked as arrived and checked in will automatically be set to a missed appointment status. This will allow the billing office to run a report for missed appointments. If your practice charges for those, quickly post missed appointment charges, and will save in frustration of trying to hunt down encounter forms that simply don't exist. Additionally, check in, check out will allow you to, as soon as you check out a patient, it toggles right into the charge posting screen, allowing you to efficiently post not only the patient's copay or time of service payment, but also the charges that are marked up on the charge slip for that day. Holiday vacation allows you to quickly close either appointment days or date ranges for a provider and allows you to efficiently process any affected appointments. And finally, we have the waiting list. The waiting list can be a very useful tool, allowing you to make it as convenient as possible for patients to get appointments on days they would otherwise not be able to get, including allowing you to fill up slots where patients cancel appointments at the last minute, but others would like to come in at a moment's notice. So the waiting list is a way to recover from the lost revenue on missed appointments and do so efficiently. This is going to conclude the scheduling and appointment searches and appointment training.